If you're a fan of the Arkham Horror board game and have been longingly waiting for a video game version to come along, you're likely to be quite disappointed with Arkham Horror Mother's Embrace. And if you're just a regular gamer looking for a light horror investigation adventure game, you're almost certain to be disappointed, because Mother's Embrace just doesn't know what sort of game it wants to be. Hi folks, it's Mark here bringing you my review of Arkham Horror Mother's Embrace, and if you'd like to see my entire playthrough, you can check it out at the link down below on the second channel. Like the Arkham Horror board game, Mother's Embrace is based on H.P. Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu mythos. Set in the 1920s, you play the part of an investigator, going initially to look at something that may have happened to one of your friends who's called for help, but soon escalating in an attempt to save the world from the arrival of some hellish god. Which is pretty much how any Call of Cthulhu-based adventure goes, right? Without giving away any spoilers here, these sort of games generally rely on the player investigating a mysterious sequence of events whilst unearthing clues and trying to piece the story together to find out what really is going on. All the while, your sanity is being drained away by the realization that the reality that you hold to be true maybe isn't, and there are very dark things and events afoot. The game takes place over a series of chapters, each one set to a specific location as part of the story. You get to freely roam around trying to turn up clues, trying to solve the mystery of just what is going on. And then if there's any encounter with bad guys, as there will be, the game jumps into an XCOM style turn-based combat. The trouble is that neither element of the game really feels like it fits together very well, and this might have something to do with the development, as this game was originally billed as Mansions of Madness, which is another Cthulhu-based board game. At some point in the development it was decided that that wasn't going to work out, however, and it was changed to Arkham Horror. The thing is, it's best to think of Mother's Embrace as an interactive story, because the whole thing is on rails. There are virtually no decisions you can make which affects any sort of outcome, and it's just there really to present you with a story and give you something to do. But does it work at either? Well, we'll get into that in a minute. First up, let's talk about the graphics and sound, and the graphics are really nothing special at all here. Some of the cutscenes and some of the artwork does capture the feel of the board game pretty well, and that looks pretty good. Particularly the cover art for the game, I think, really fits in well and is nice, but the actual in-game visuals are just, yeah, they look old, dated, simple. And the combat in particular and the animations don't look so great, and there is absolutely no attempt to lip sync the voiceovers whatsoever. The sound, however, is a bit of a different story. I liked the soundtrack to this. I thought it felt very in character for the 1920s based Cthulhu games that we know and love, and also the voiceover, whilst other people have complained about it, I thought the voiceover was very good. The different characters I met in the game and the character I chose to play as, there are several, all sounded like they were voiced really well.
My name is Jenny Barnes. Professor Tillingist is a friend of the family. When I heard her scream, I came up to make sure she was all right.
Seems like I'm on the right track. Something hinky's going on here.
And there were some discrepancies in the pronunciation of some of the names and characters in the story, but that's no great surprise. The actors have obviously been recorded at different locations and sent their own scripts, and no one's told them how to pronounce some of the names. That's something we can deal with. I just found it rather amusing. Alright then, on to my likes and dislikes of Mother's Embrace, and we'll start with the big thing, the most important thing that I liked. The story. This is the most important thing in any Call of Cthulhu adventure, and of course in a story-based adventure game, and I liked it. It felt very much like every typical Call of Cthulhu adventure I have ever played. You play as an investigator, you receive an invitation to a friend or colleague's house or place of work. You go there only to find that things are not as they seem, something's gone wrong, and you get drawn into the disappearance / murder / strange events that are going on. And slowly your vision of reality is altered as you realize that what you believe to be true isn't, and there are darker forces at work, and you try to cling on to your sanity as you unravel the horrors of the mystery. And yes, that's exactly what it feels like here without giving away any spoilers. If you're familiar with every Call of Cthulhu game or adventure based anywhere ever, then you'll know exactly what you're going to get here. And it's pretty good because it kept me playing all the way through to the end. I just wanted to see how it was going to work out, although I did get a pretty good inkling about halfway through the game what had happened to our friend and what was going on. See if you pick up on the same thing as you play through it if you decide to get this game. But it was still good and I enjoyed it. The voiceovers were something that stood out particularly good to me. I really enjoyed them. I know I mentioned them already, but other people have complained. I thought they were good and really fit the characters, or at least the characters that I met and talked to in the game. There was a couple of puzzles in the game. I mean, literally, I think there was 3. I counted them across all the scenarios. They were the sort of things that you have to refer back to your journal and look up the various clues you've unearthed and put them together and use the old grey matter to figure out what sequence to do to open the object or event or whatever. The trouble is, there was only 3 across the entire game. This sort of game wanted to be absolutely stuffed with puzzles like that, things that you would have to work out from the clues and information you have picked up. So more puzzles, please, because the very few that are in here were good, not too hard, but good, and I wanted more. And other than that, it did feel fairly true to the board games in the sense that the story is very familiar to every Call of Cthulhu adventure ever. And it did at least make an effort to put in some of the ideas in the board games into the game. However, that is about as good as anything I can say about the game. It was overall disappointing, and here are some of the things I didn't like. Let's start off with the camera angle. Oh my god, this drove me mad during the exploration phases of the game, which are the majority. It's fixed slightly above, behind and over your character's shoulder. You can rotate it left and right and spin it around and see what's in the room, but you can't move it up and down, for example, to look down a long corridor. This drove me mad right from the very beginning of the game, because there are some long corridors and you want to look down to see if there's any objects you can interact with, doors you can open, or maybe there's going to be some sort of encounter that you don't want to trigger. But no, you have to actually walk down everywhere to be able to see what's basically in front of your character's feet. And this angle drove me mad. Also, more annoying than it needed to be was the movement in the exploration phase. It is very slow, which is alright when you're moving around a room to activate the various clues that are lit up in front of you just to go and click on. But when you want to move from one side of the map to the other to go and pick something up, to go back to something you couldn't do earlier, it is so slow. And you can hold the spacebar down on PC to move in accelerated mode, which I don't know why they called it that. It certainly isn't running, it's just a slightly faster shuffle, and going anywhere is just unnecessarily slow, and I can't see any reason for that whatsoever. There are no traps to fall into, there are no ledges or platforms to fall off, and there are no encounters that you will go charging into unaware of at full speed, because when there's a fight in a room, the door that you open to get in there is generally lit up and glowing. You can see a glow coming through, which is an indicator. The game even tells you that's an indicator that there'll be bad guys behind there. So there's no reason why you have to move so slowly around everything. The exploration phase of the game also has no sense of fear. There are no traps, there are no things to fall through. You know exactly where every combat encounter is going to be. More or less, there are a couple that are triggered through other actions you do. But because you know where the fights are going to be, you can avoid them until you are ready, till you are tooled up, till you've explored everywhere else and picked up all the items that you want, and you can time exactly when you go into them. There should be that foreboding sense of doom that you get in Cthulhu games, of opening that door and not knowing what's on the other side, looking in a cupboard where something might jump out at you and attack you, looking in a mirror where you might see some horrible reflection looking back that drains your sanity. There is nothing like this in this game. There's just no sense of fear or scariness when going around. The exploration side of the game is also filled with absolutely stupid events that I think were supposed to be puzzles but aren't. When you come across a chest of drawers, for example, and there's a little icon over it showing there's something to interact with there, you go to open it, it'll say, oh, this drawer is stuck. And there'll be maybe 3 options, like force the lock, break the drawer, or give the whole thing a shake. And if you've got the right investigator in your party, because you can have several investigators in your party that you'll meet throughout the adventure, they each have individual skills, and if you've got the right one, it'll tell you exactly which answer to pick. If you don't have the right one, it's just a complete guess, and there is no logic to it whatsoever. I once came to a massive oak wardrobe and it said the door was jammed on it. Do you want to break it? Do you want to force it open? Do you want to shake the wardrobe? Well, guess which one it was. Yeah, it was shake the wardrobe. I've never in my life dreamed of shaking a massive, heavy oak wardrobe to try and open it, when the 2 obvious answers there are to break the door or force it open. Getting one of these wrong advances the mythos clock, which you can see in the top right of the screen. In any Call of Cthulhu game, Advancing mythos clocks and doom tracks and anything like that should lead to absolutely horrendous effects for the players. In this, it is such a minor inconvenience that it really doesn't add to any sense of foreboding whatsoever. But you will tick it over several times in these damn silly encounters, because the action to complete the encounter, for example, opening a lock by picking it or forcing it, it doesn't follow any sense of logic, because the real answer will be to shake the trunk or something stupid like that. There's also lots of events put into the game which just don't make any sense, and are just there to obviously drain your character's sanity. Like, there's 2 locations I found which had dirty sinks in, and it said they were interactable, so I interact with it because there might be something in the water that's a clue. There are in bathtubs elsewhere. And I just had a sanity check. Not because there was some horrible tentacle thing, because there was a severed arm in there, because there were dirty plates in there that caused a sanity check. Sanity checks in Cthulhu games are reserved for things with tentacles and horrors and stuff that sucks your brains out, or things that you see into another dimension and realise that the reality that you know is the false one, or it's not what you thought. But finding someone's congealed remains of pie and mash from last night half scraped off the plate should not be causing sanity checks. And then let's get on to the combat, which again was a bit of a letdown. It didn't feel anywhere near as polished as other turn-based tactical combat games like XCOM, like Gears Tactics, like anything that we played. Not even like Empire of Sin, which I reviewed recently as well. It's very simple. It doesn't feel like the board games. There's no chance to miss with an attack for either your characters or the bad guys. Every action that's a combat action is going to hit, be it a ranged or a melee attack. The only difference is the amount of damage it does. If you have a knife that says it's going to do 6 to 7 damage, it will do either 6 or 7 damage exactly, unless the target has some sort of melee defense. There's a chance of critical hit, which is the only random thing in there really, but the combat feels so simple and easy. I never once had a character go down through running out of hit points. There's never any sense of danger there, ever. Even against the bosses, they were quite easy to manage. So overall, the game just can't decide what it wants to be. First based on Mansions of Madness, and then switched to Arkham Horror during development, and I think that shows in the mishmash of game mechanics put together here. I did finish playing it because the story I quite enjoyed, but unless you are a Call of Cthulhu or Arkham Horror fan, you're probably not going to think very much of this game. Overall, it's a 6 out of 10 for me because it's not that expensive, but you'll probably never want to play through it a second time because it's going to be pretty much identical every time you play. It is on rails, there are no decisions you can make which will affect the story outcome. So folks, if you found this video useful, please do turn your notifications on and click that bell so you'll be notified of all my future reviews.